Oh my, it's Wednesday and it has already been a week. I missed you yesterday, damnation. Thank you for the well wishes while I traveled. We have a jam packed show and I'm a little bit under the weather. So let's jump right in. I am so glad that you are here. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show as we unpack the brilliance that is Vanity Fair and more. Let's go. So yesterday, while I was traveling, the Vanity Fair story broke, and I was so upset that I was not able to be live because fucking G. But the first person that I thought about as the story was coming to light, all that Susie Wiles offered up to Chris Whibby, the author of the Vanity Fair piece, and the brilliance that was Christopher Anderson, the photographer of the Vanity Fair piece, was this man, James Baldwin. When he said, the role of the artist is exactly the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see. And you see, why did that come to mind for me? Well, because there is something that is really beautiful about art and artists. And I mean in all forms, whether that be a sculptor, a painter, a poet, a comedian, an author, any type of art. The purpose, their job is to reveal the truth of the moment that you are living inside of, to provide deep reflection, to have us ask questions, right? To tilt our heads and go, huh, I never looked at things this way. I never saw them that way, right? And there's a reason why I have spent so many years, now 10 years, just absolutely disgusted with mainstream corporate media. And it hasn't just been, right, their capitulation to Donald Trump and their obfuscation of their duty to be the fourth estate and to check power, but it has also been around the culture side of our media and their willingness to roll out red carpets for Donald Trump and his sycophants and to whitewash them and to give them favor in outlets like Vogue, right? Like Vanity Fair and others that add legitimacy into the politics that they have weaponized, right? When you start to see these people in culture spaces, when you start to, hear not only the both sides, but also like the heartfelt stories, and let me tell you about this, and let me show you my outfits, and all of these things, when they start to seep into our everyday politic, well, it normalizes them. It normalizes the cruelty. It normalizes the greed. It normalizes the grifting. And so initially, when I saw the post of Vanity Fair, and this was what came across my feed early in the morning, I was like, fuck, like Vanity Fair at 2, like really? You're going to give this piece of shit regime, this white nationalist regime, a profile? And then as the day would go on, oh no, that isn't what they did at all. They provided a profile, they provided an interview, but the pictures by Christopher Anderson revealed so much about who this administration is, about what they are about. And in the close up, cracks and needle prints and crumbling of these decaying faces, what I saw was the crumbling of the American empire, of our democracy, of our decency. You see, to airbrush these people would be to airbrush over their cruelty, would be to give platform to their white nationalist beliefs and sentiments. It would be to legitimize, right, this both sides, as if white nationalism is a ideology that is warranting of debate. That I, as a Black person, as a queer person, am left to prove myself to these people. And so what Vanity Fair's spread showed us is that there is a way that media can be used as a tool for good, that the platform can be revealing, not by just disparaging these people, but holding them to account in their own words, showing the truth of who they are and what they look like. We have spent the last 10 years being gaslit by Trumpism. So much so that many of us no longer hold the presidency to any type of esteem. So when he comes out following the tragic murder of director Rob Reiner and his wife and says the most grotesque things that he could possibly say to make that tragic incident about himself and about Rob Reiner's politics, all we do is shrug, because our expectations have been worn away. Our expectations have been placed into the gutter, along with our values. There is a way to use art, to use the narrative to showcase exactly the truth of these people, not their alternative facts, not their Mar-a-Lago makeover, but who they are: small, broken, crumbling, grotesque individuals. And so I want you to take a listen as Nicole Wallace so eloquently broke down what we wanted to hear from, again, this interview.
Susie Wiles tells Whipple this: some clinical psychologist that knows 1 million times more than I do will dispute what I'm going to say, but high-functioning alcoholics, or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink. And so I'm a little bit of an expert in big personalities, Wiles said. Trump has, quote, an alcoholic's personality. He, quote, operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do, nothing, zero, nothing, end quote. J.D. Vance, who she describes like this, quote, he's been a conspiracy theorist for a decade, end quote. As for how J.D. Vance traveled from the belief that he said publicly that Trump might be, quote, America's Hitler, or, quote, a cynical a-hole like Nixon, not to mention an idiot, to now serving as his vice president, Susie Wiles offers this explanation, quote, his conversion came when he was running for the Senate, and I think his conversion was a little bit more sort of political, end quote. As for Russ Vought, the architect of Project 2025 and the director of the Office of Management and Budget, he's a, quote, right-wing absolute zealot, end quote. Regarding Elon Musk, who took a chainsaw to the federal government, Susie Wiles says this, quote, he's an avowed ketamine user, and he sleeps in a sleeping bag in the OEOB in the daytime. And he's an odd duck, as I think geniuses are. You know, it's not helpful, but he is his own person, end quote. The journalist, Chris Whipple, adding this, quote, when I asked her, Susie Wiles, what she thought of Elon Musk reposting a tweet about public sector workers killing millions under Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, she replied, quote, I think that's when he's microdosing, end quote. The White House Chief of Staff describing the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, the person atop the nuclear command structure, as someone with an alcoholic's personality, that the vice president is simply there for politics, that he's an unprincipled conspiracy theorist and has been for a decade. That is not normal. Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, is his chief enabler. Vance telling Vanity Fair this, quote, her job is to actually facilitate Trump's vision and to make his vision come to life, end quote. Wiles actually is blowing Trump's cover. Here's what she says about Trump's campaign to prosecute his political enemies. Back in March, I'd asked Wiles, quote, do you ever go to Trump and say, look, this is not supposed to be a retribution tour? Yes, I do, Susie Wiles replied. We have a loose agreement that the score settling will end before the first 90 days are over. In late August, I asked Susie Wiles, quote, remember when you said to me months ago that Trump promised to end the revenge and retribution tour after 90 days? Quote, I don't think he's on a retribution tour, she said. A governing principle for him is, I don't want what happened to me to happen to anybody else. And so people that have done bad things need to get out of government. In some cases, it may look like retribution, and there may be an element of that from time to time. Who would blame him? Not me. But regarding the Tish James case, Susie Wiles admits this, quote, well, that might be the one retribution. And on the Comey case, Susie Wiles says, quote, I mean, people could think it does look vindictive. I can't tell you why you should not think that. Susie Wiles said of Trump, quote, I don't think he wakes up thinking about retribution, but when there's an opportunity, he will go for it, end quote. In a statement, the White House stood by Susie Wiles today. She released her own statement on X saying that the article was a, quote, hit piece and that it was missing context. Okay.
Was a hit piece and missing context. She gave 11 interviews on tape, on the record with Chris Whipple over the course of months. So, out of context, I don't think so. And what is really interesting here, folks, is that the White House isn't disputing any of the facts that have been outlined in the two-part interview. They just don't like how it came out. They don't like how it's making them look. But they can't deny the facts, just like J.D. Vance and Carolyn Levitt can't deny what their faces actually look like when they aren't filled with the right lighting and filter and fillers and this, that, and the other thing, when people aren't at a distance. You see, they weren't able to control the image. The truth always finds a way of seeping out. Again, I think as I was going through this piece about bell hooks, the function of art is to do more than tell it like it is. It is to imagine what is possible. You see, folks, we have been duped for the last 10 years into believing that Donald Trump's power is inevitable. That who these people are is just who this version of America is going to be. And that all we should do is be our best and keep our heads down and just, try and get by, try and grind this out. But you and I, we know that that's not true. We know that keeping our heads down and trying to shrink ourselves to the point of invisibility is not going to keep us safe. Right now, the jobs report came out this week after 2 months of it being nowhere to be found. 4.7% unemployment. The unemployment rate has reached COVID levels. For Black people, that number is double, above 8%. Millions are out of work, and that number is going to increase as we go into 2026. I heard a term this week called recession hiring, meaning that these corporations, the ones that we've been told for 40 years are going to somehow trickle down prosperity to the rest of us, have said, fuck those people. We don't need them. We have AI. And they are wiping out the middle class, one firing rush at a time. The beauty for them in AI isn't about using AI as a tool to advance humanity. It is to replace humanity. And those that are left are part of the eugenics plan of the survival of the fittest. And so this piece, Susie Wiles' interview, shows us exactly who these people are and what they think about the rest of us. Just look at J.D. Vance. I mean, it's hard, but look. Vanity Fair wrote this on their X account. During the Vanity Fair photo session, Vance cracked, quote, I'll give you $100 for every person you make look really shitty compared to me, and $1,000 if it's Marco. the pettiness, the smallness. That's the vice president of the United States. Not only is there no decorum, there's no fucking class. Because everything with them is about perception. Looking big and tough, seeming powerful, seeming larger than life. What Christopher Anderson's piece is, what his photography did, and this piece, look at J.D. Vance. That's the face of cruelty. The scrunch. He thinks that he looks powerful. And what I'm saying is that not only did Christopher Anderson capture their presence, he captured their aura. Do you understand what I'm saying when I say aura? Like the energy field around you. It's undeniable. Bobblehead Barbie, Caroline Levitt. This woman is 27 years old. I can tell you this. I am not 27 and I don't look like that. And when I was 27, I didn't look like that. But this is what they make you give. There are pictures floating around of what she looked like before she got into Trump's orbit. Oh my God. Why would anybody purposefully do this to themselves? Connect the dots of all the lies that she is told because they're strung around her mouth from her lip injections. How's Caroline Levitt faring in the onslaught of questions about the Epstein files? This was a question that was asked to Susie Wiles. It's pretty clear he wants us to be aggressively offensive when it comes to this issue. Susie Wiles also told us, oh yeah, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. She also said Bill Clinton is in there too, but he was never on the island. So you, chief of staff, just told us that your boss is a fucking liar. She says that she's not an enabler or a bitch, and I beg to differ. I'm not an enabler. I'm also not a bitch, Susie Wiles tells Chris Whipple. I guess time will tell whether I've been effective. Depends on what you think effective looks like. If it looks like enabling an alcoholic personality to destroy our democracy, then yes, you've been effective. If it looks like resurrecting Donald Trump's campaign in 2024 to make him a viable candidate when he had 4 indictments looming over him, if that is what success looks like, then yes, you have been successful. The blankness in her eyes. It's as if, as the photos were being snapped, pieces of their soul were actually leaving their bodies. So following the interview released yesterday, she took to social media to try and discredit the interview that she gave, 11 of, on the record. She wrote, quote, "The article published earlier this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. The truth is the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months than any other president has accomplished in 8 years, and that is due to the unmatched leadership and vision of President Trump, for whom I have been honored to work for the better part of a decade. None of this will stop our relentless pursuit of making America great again." What part of alcoholic personality did the rest of us take out of context? There have been a myriad of books written about Barack Obama, quotes, interviews, written. Has anyone ever heard anything to the effect of being wholly political, of being a right-wing zealot, of being a ketamine user? These are all things that she offered up. She wasn't held hostage and please say something terrible and then we will release you. My question is, was she drunk when she sat down for these interviews? Or, as many are wondering, is whether or not she is recognizing that the Trump Titanic has actually begun to sink and she wants to begin the distancing that is necessary to say, well, you know, it's the rest of them that are batshit crazy and on drugs. I'm just trying to do my best here. I try to talk to Donald Trump, but you know, you can't really talk to an alcoholic personality that thinks that they can do whatever the fuck they want. So, following that post, right? It was like, did you think that this interview wasn't being recorded? Susie Wiles initially attempted to dispute that she issued certain remarks to Vanity Fair, but the writer of the piece played a recording of her comments, making it impossible to deny. You can lie to yourself all you want, but you can't really lie to the rest of us. I want you to take a listen now to Chris Whipple, who appeared, he was making the rounds yesterday, but he appeared on CNN with Anderson Cooper, defended his piece.
Joining me now is Chris Whipple in his first broadcast interview since his two-part Vanity Fair piece landed. He's also the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Gatekeepers, How the White House Chiefs of Staff Define Every Presidency. Chris, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, great to be here.
A lot to talk about. First of all the things Susie Wiles told you, what surprised you the most?
You know, Anderson, this was one of those cases as a reporter in your career when lightning strikes. And it was astonishing to me the extent to which she was unguarded and freewheeling on the record all the time. I've covered, as you know, I wrote a book about the Biden White House where everybody was on deep background requiring quote approval. Quite the opposite in this case. Susie Wiles in 11 interviews over 11 months.
That's how many there were, 11 interviews over 11 months.
11 in-depth interviews in which she was on the record. Everything in the article was on the record.
Were you recording every interview?
I recorded every interview.
Even ones that weren't on the phone. There was one where she was doing laundry, apparently.
Yeah, everything is on tape.
Did she know this was for Vanity Fair? Did she think this was for a long-term book that you were doing?
She knew I was working on a book at the outset. When I told her that Vanity Fair had agreed to do a piece, to publish a piece, she was all in and enthusiastic about it.
Why? Because she is so legendarily averse to being out front.
That's why I say that this was lightning striking. It's amazing to me. First of all, I think that she is the most fascinating person in American politics, not only because she ran a brilliant campaign and brought Trump back from the dead to win the 2024 election. She's the first female White House Chief of Staff. But in addition, she's kind of the Greta Garbo of White House chiefs. I mean, she's never on camera, rarely on camera, hardly ever gives interviews, and yet she did. I think it's because, all I can tell you is what she told me. She felt the Trump 1.0 had been unfairly covered, that Trump was vilified.
During the first administration.
During the first administration. She wanted a fair hearing, and I think she thought she would get one.
And one of the things the White House is saying, things were taken out of context, wildly out of context was the quote of Levitt. Are things taken out of context? Because some of the quotes they're tight. I mean, it's like a sentence.
Everything was scrupulously in context. And I got to tell you, the giveaway, when you're a journalist and you hear the target, the subject talking about things like context and omissions, you know you're on the right track because there isn't a single fact or a single assertion that they've challenged in the piece. It really reminds me of the Watergate days when Ben Bradley talked about non-denial denials.
Right.
This is the ultimate non-denial.
They're not really attacking. Well, I absolutely never said that. Although Susie Wiles did at one point say.
We're going to pause for a moment because there is breaking news. Thank you, Susan, so very much. The breaking news, dear friends, is that Dan Bongino, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, is stepping down from his post. And funny enough, this comes just 2 days before the Epstein files are due to be released by this White House. He is right now on X 8 minutes ago, and he wrote this: I will be leaving my position with the FBI in January. I want to thank President Trump, AG Bondi, and Director Patel for the opportunity to serve with purpose. Most importantly, I want to thank you, my fellow Americans, for the privilege to serve you. God bless America and those who defend her. Again, the interesting part about this is that this comes on the heels of when there is a deadline, a court-ordered deadline to release the Epstein files. This is the very thing, the very case that Dan Bongino was all around the manosphere talking about the deep state, and that when they got in there, they were going to release the Epstein files, they were going to unearth the deep state, and America was going to be saved. And here he is now, just days before this release is supposed to happen, now all of a sudden saying, well, thanks so much. He didn't even make it a year. I'm out of here. So as we're taking in this interview that was released by Susan Wiles, telling us the inner workings of this chaotic clown car of cruelty that is the Trump administration, on top of which you have Dan Bongino stepping away so that he doesn't have to be a part of what we all can see is Trump Titanic breaking down and beginning to sink, and the rats are beginning to jump ship to try and save themselves, save their image. Who's gonna be next? Who is going to be next? Seemingly, right, following the Vanity Fair article, it was as if, and Ron is great here, he goes, hilarious. The White House had all the cabinet members simultaneously put out statements supporting Susie Wiles after the Vanity Fair article came out. And here is all of them saying how amazing Susie is, how wonderful she is, how she is a credit to the Trump administration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that you would need to offer up those statements if it was actually true. The real truth is that the White House has been reeling since the release of the Vanity Fair article. What Aaron Parnes reported earlier this morning is that the White House, the morale is in full downward spiral. Again, the question is why? Anyone who knows anything about communications and communication 101, you don't disparage your boss in a public outlet. You know that things are on the record and recorded. So to say things are taken out of context, then guess what Chris Whipple can do? I'll just release the tapes. Y'all decide for yourself. They look incompetent and they look stupid. And why do they look that way? Because they are. Another great image from Christopher Anderson, this Goebbels inspired photograph of Stephen Miller. I mean, it is like the evil is emanating off of him like steam on a pavement in the summertime when water is splashed. Just repugnant. It's, it's extraordinary, folks. Also, I think that at the ripe old height of 5'1", am taller than a lampshade on a side table. What say all of you? Like, is he bent over like that because he's like trying to find his spine? Trying to find where he left his soul and his conscious? I don't know. It's possible. And then the late, great Toni Morrison. This is why they always get rid of the arts. This is why they went for the arts, the Kennedy Center, culling that. They went for the universities and the colleges. Every dictator gets rid of the artist first. They burn the books and execute the artist first. Art might do something. It's dangerous. And what we know inside of this kind of regime, this fascist regime, is that critical thinking and the truth are their kryptonite. I doubt that others will follow in the footsteps of Vanity Fair, but my God, did we need this week? Did we need this as we close out this horrific first year under Donald Trump's second term? There is a part of me, and I said this earlier with Jared Yates Sexton, that is exhausted. I find December absolutely exhausting. It is dark and it is cold, and the weight of all that we have experienced feels like it is hanging on this month. And so it's important, folks, that we have these moments of lightness, that we have these moments that actually make us think, that reveal to us their truth, so that we don't normalize their hatred, that we don't normalize and look away from their grotesque energy and nature. That we see these people for who they are, for how small they are, for how bigoted they are. That is what media is supposed to do. That is what the artist is supposed to do. That is what the journalist is supposed to do. Show us the truth. So right before I get out of here, folks, 4 Republicans bucked the party to force a House vote on Obamacare subsidies. 4 politically vulnerable Republicans rebelled against party leaders and joined a Democratic effort to force a House vote in 2026 on a 3-year extension of Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to lapse at the end of the month. Democrats called on House Republicans to scrap their alternative legislation being debated Wednesday and vote on the extension before year's end. What, folks, again, the rats are beginning to jump ship. There are cracks like those that are in Carolyn Bobblehead Levitt's face and in Marco Rubio's demeanor that shows us that Donald Trump's hold over this party is waning. Because here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. Donald Trump has given them nothing to run on in 2026. He has given them absolutely nothing to run on. They can't run on the health of the economy. They can't run on healthcare. They can't run on immigration. Every issue that Donald Trump campaigned on, he is underwater in by double digits. His popularity is well below 40%. Usually, the first year of a new administration, your party is given your accomplishments to run on. Donald Trump is set to give a speech tonight. Speech, I use in air quotes because I'm pretty sure that motherfucker can't read a teleprompter, and I'm pretty sure he's going to go off on a long-ass tangent, probably about Rob Reiner and his wife, probably about Venezuela, probably about like how amazing he is and why everyone should give him and gift him a gold brick. Like, I personally, I will watch the clips because, as I said earlier today, I protect my energy. I don't want Donald Trump's voice, energy, his lies, and gaslighting in my home. I don't want it in my space. I encourage all of you not to watch. You can read the transcript tomorrow. You can look at the clips on social media. It is not going to be worth your time. What a narcissist can't handle is when they are no longer the center of attention. Right? Donald Trump is begging for our attention. Don't give it to him. Trump will deliver a primetime address tonight as his approval ratings sit below 40% and Americans feel increasingly bleak about the economy. Though he's recently mocked Democrats' focus on affordability, their focus on pocketbook issues is seen as why they swept key off-year elections in November. And the president has tried to address the issue recently, hitting the road to make his economic case, which is what exactly? Because it's very Maria Antoinette, except guess what? He doesn't even want you to eat cake. He pitched supporters in Pennsylvania last week at that tiny, small, pathetic high school gym rally on promising bigger tax returns for who exactly? The rich? Because as soon as the big, ugly, disgusting, grotesque, grifter-ass bill hits, they have permanent tax cuts, and you're working to support them and their fifth, sixth, seventh home. His labeling of the economy as asinine in a recent political interview was knocked by even some conservatives as tone deaf, because that is what Donald Trump is. He doesn't listen to anyone or anything. It's why Wiles referred to him as saying he has an alcoholic's personality. An alcoholic in the midst of a bender, who are they listening to? Who can control them? No one. That's how she described the president of the United States of America. And we're all supposed to just think that that shit is normal and think that, oh, all things are under control? This is where we are. This is who this country is under Donald Trump. But I want to say this as I close out today. His power is not inevitable. Their reign is not cemented. It is still up to us, the people. And as we have seen in places like Bulgaria and others, governments can be shut down when we, the people, get to critical mass and decide that we have had enough. That is what it means to have a national strike. That is what it means to shut this shit down. Turn off your fucking TV. Stop with the streaming. Recognize that the numbing that we have been doing is not keeping us safe. It's keeping us disconnected from our power and from each other. We have an opportunity in 2026 to take this country back. And I'm not talking about midterms. We'll be lucky if we make it there. The pain is going to get greater. The job loss is going to get worse. The damage to our healthcare system and sickness is going to become the norm and spread. We have the power to stop it. Truly, we do. But we have to muster the courage first. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. I will be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, for a supersized episode. I'm a bit under the weather from my travel, so I'm going to take a little bit of rest this evening, but I really, truly wanted to deliver you my thoughts on the Vanity Fair piece and where we are. But I say this again, folks, do not waste your energy on Donald Trump tonight. He doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve your attention. Go watch a Rob Reiner movie instead. Go spend time with your family. Go reach out to somebody that's been on your mind, but you haven't had the time to text, right? Go touch grass, cuddle a pet, water a plant, anything other than giving that narcissist piece of shit your attention. Thank you so much to the super stickers and super thanks. D-Dash for the $4.99. Susan, our wonderful moderator, for the $10. PJ, as always, coming in big with the $49.99. Susan for gifting a membership to the Danielle Moodie channel. Dexter for $5. Henry for $20. Each and every single dollar that you offer, dear friends, allows me to do the work that I do with integrity and the passion and truthfulness that you deserve. I will be back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. I hope to see each and every one of you there. As always, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. Take care of yourselves and each other.